The hardest thing a father can learn is that being needed and being respected are two completely different things. For 30 years, I told myself that if I just kept building, kept fixing, kept showing up, respect would follow naturally. I was wrong. It took one sentence, spoken by a stranger in a $5,000 suit, to show me that the man who lays the foundation is rarely the man who gets invited to stand on it. Welcome back to the channel. If you've ever poured your whole life into something, a family, a home, a child, only to be treated like hired help, the moment someone with more money walked in, then you already know exactly how my chest felt that night. Before we get into what happened at that engagement dinner, hit subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Robert Hale. I'm 58 years old, and I've been a general contractor in this county for over 30 years. My hands are rough, my back aches most mornings, and I drive a 2015 Ford F350 with over 200,000 miles on it. If I have one flaw, it's that I never learned how to ask for credit. I just did the work and let the work speak. My daughter Claire is 26. Her mother, Diane, and I divorced 8 years ago. Diane remarried a man named Gerald Whitfield, a hedge fund manager who wears cufflinks to breakfast. When Diane left, I didn't fight over the house. I just quietly built Claire a life instead, including, 3 years ago, the actual house Claire now lives in with her fiancé, Preston. I designed it, poured the foundation myself, framed every wall, wired half the electrical myself on weekends. I told Claire it was a wedding gift, years early. I never told Preston who built it. I figured it didn't matter who knew, as long as she had a good life. Saturday, November 14th, 7:40 in the evening. The engagement dinner was at the Hartwell Country Club, the kind of place with white tablecloths and a valet who looks at your truck like it insulted him personally. I wore my one good suit. I sat near the back next to Diane, who barely looked at me. Preston stood up to give a toast. He was mid-30s, silver watch, the kind of smile that never quite reaches the eyes. He thanked everyone for coming, thanked his own parents for believing in his vision, and then he gestured toward me, almost as an afterthought. And of course, he said, raising his glass with a small laugh, "We've got to thank Claire's dad. Robert here does some handyman work around the house when things break. Real handy to have around, honestly." A few people chuckled politely. Claire didn't correct him. She just looked down at her plate. Handyman. 30 years of contracting licenses, 30 years of building schools, churches, and finally, the very house I was sitting near that night, reduced to handy to have around in front of 40 strangers. If you've ever felt invisible, at the exact moment your life's work was standing right in front of everyone, take a second and hit that like button. It helps other fathers know they're not alone in this. I didn't say anything at the table. I raised my glass along with everyone else, but something in my chest went very quiet, the way it does right before a decision gets made. Sunday, November 15th, 9 o'clock in the morning. I woke up early, the way I always do, and instead of driving to the job site, I found myself sitting in my truck outside a building I hadn't visited in months, the Hartwell County Veterans Rebuild Center. It's a non-profit I helped start 12 years ago, back when I still had time to think about things bigger than invoices and permits. We take donated materials and volunteer labor to repair homes for disabled veterans who can't afford contractors. I hadn't been in almost a year. Work had swallowed me whole, and if I'm honest, some quiet part of me had been chasing Claire's approval so hard I forgot what actually filled me up. Inside, I found Harold Jennings, a 68-year-old Army veteran who runs the place. Now that I've stepped back, he was going through blueprints alone at a folding table, squinting at them under a bad fluorescent light. "Robert," he said, surprised. "Didn't expect you on a Sunday." "Didn't expect to be here," I admitted. "Needed somewhere to put my hands." Harold studied me for a second, the way men who've seen real hardship can read a room without asking questions. "We've got the Alvarez place," he said. "Staff sergeant lost both legs in Kandahar. Roof's been leaking into his bedroom for 2 months. We don't have the labor to fix it before winter." I didn't answer right away. I just picked up the blueprints and started reading. "What time do we start?" I asked. "Whenever you're ready," Harold said. For the next 5 days, I worked the Alvarez roof before and after my regular jobs. I brought in 2 guys from my crew off the clock because they insisted. We tore off rotted shingles in freezing wind, replaced water-damaged decking, and rebuilt the flashing around the chimney by hand. Staff Sergeant Alvarez couldn't climb the ladder to check our work, so every evening I'd sit with him on his porch and describe exactly what we'd done, board by board, so he'd know his home wasn't a mystery anymore. "Why are you doing this?" he asked me on the 3rd night, watching the sun go down over his half-finished roof. I thought about Preston's toast, handy to have around. "Because somebody should build things for people who actually see the value in it," I said. He nodded slowly, like he understood more than I'd said out loud. By Thursday, the roof was done. Harold mentioned, almost in passing, that a local news crew from Channel 9 had been doing a segment on veteran housing gaps in the county, and they wanted to feature the Alvarez repair as a rare success story. They asked if the lead contractor would say a few words on camera. I almost said no. I've spent 30 years staying out of the spotlight, letting the work speak for itself. But something in me, maybe the version of myself that sat quietly through that toast, decided it was time to stop being quiet. "Sure," I told Harold. "I'll say a few words." I had no idea that Claire's engagement party, a second celebration, this one hosted at Gerald and Diane's house, with Preston's business partners invited, was scheduled to air live coverage of local community news on the exact same evening, on the exact same channel, playing on the exact same television in Gerald's living room. If you're starting to feel that quiet, satisfying kind of tension building, that's exactly how I felt. Thursday night, standing on Sergeant Alvarez's porch, waiting for the camera light to turn red. Thursday, November 19th, 6 o'clock in the evening. The Channel 9 reporter, a woman named Officer Diaz, no relation to the military, just her last name, stood on Sergeant Alvarez's porch with the new roofline behind her, the camera light glowing red against the early winter dusk. "We're here with a story about what community can still do in this county," she said into the microphone. "Staff Sergeant Miguel Alvarez lost both legs in Kandahar. For 2 months, his roof had been failing him. This week, a team led by local contractor Robert Hale repaired it, entirely on volunteer time." She turned to me. "Robert, what made you take this on?" I looked at the camera, the way I look at a client when I'm not selling them anything. "I spent 30 years building things for people," I said. "Sometimes you build a house and nobody remembers your name. That's fine. But this roof, I wanted Sergeant Alvarez to know exactly who stood behind it and why. A man who serves his country shouldn't have to wonder if anyone's coming back for him. Sergeant Alvarez, sitting beside me in his chair, added quietly, "He didn't just fix my roof. He sat with me every night and told me what he did, board by board, told me I mattered enough to explain it to." The segment ran for 90 seconds. I didn't think about it again until my phone rang at 8:15 that night. It was Claire. "Dad," she said, and her voice was different than it had been at the country club, smaller, unsteady. "You were on the news at Gerald's house. Everyone was there, Preston's business partners, his parents. The TV was on in the background, and suddenly it's you standing there talking about Sergeant Alvarez's roof." "I know," I said simply. "Dad," Preston's father leaned over and said, "Wait, isn't that the handyman from the wedding?" And then the reporter said your name and your company name, Hale Construction. And Gerald's business partner said, "Hale Construction. They built the community center downtown. That's a real firm." And then somebody asked whose house you two are living in. And she stopped. "You told the truth," I said. It wasn't a question. "I told them you built our house," she said, her voice cracking. "I told them you built it yourself, foundation to roof, 3 years ago, and gave it to me." Preston went completely pale. "Dad, everyone in that room went quiet." I sat in my own kitchen, coffee going cold in front of me, and felt something settle in my chest that hadn't been settled in a long time. "Dad," Claire said, "Preston wants to apologize. He wants to call you tomorrow." "He doesn't need to call me," I said. "He needs to understand something first, and that's between the two of you. I didn't build that house so I'd get thanked for it at dinner parties, Claire. I built it because you're my daughter. But I also won't sit quietly while somebody decides what my life's work is worth in front of a room full of strangers. There's a difference between humility and disappearing." "I should have corrected him that night," she whispered. I just froze. "I know," I said. "That's all right. You're learning something I took 58 years to learn myself, that letting people diminish someone you love even by staying silent is its own kind of choice." We talked for another 20 minutes, longer and more honestly than we had in years. She didn't ask me to come over. I didn't offer. Some things need space before they need forgiveness. The following Sunday, I drove back out to the Veterans Rebuild Center anyway, because Harold had 3 more roofs on the list before the real cold set in. Sergeant Alvarez was out on his porch when I passed, waved a little, calling out that his bedroom stayed warm all week for the first time since summer. I realized something out there in the cold, hands raw from the wind, that I hadn't understood at that country club table. A man's worth isn't decided in a toast or a title or a room full of $5,000 suits. It's decided in the quiet places. A porch, a roof, a Sunday morning nobody's watching. I'd spent years trying to earn a seat at a table that never really wanted me there. What I actually needed was to go back to the ground I knew how to build on. Thank you for watching my story today. If this reminded you of a time someone underestimated the work you gave for the people you love, or if you've ever had to correct the record on your own worth, drop a comment below. I read every one of them. Like this video, subscribe for more stories like this one, and remember, build your life on ground that respects you back. Take care of yourselves out there.